Grace and peace. Welcome to another episode of the TBT Show. I'm Anthony Moten, my friend and brother and partner in crime. As always, who's looking like a a soldier in the army of the Lord today. It's Shawn P. Aguilar. Hey, I'm excited about today. We have a special in-studio guest. And I just told him before we went on my first couple of encounters with him at Houston Met. Mm-hmm. I said, man, Chris, a real one.
A real one. A real one.
Man, and I'm going to give him an opportunity to introduce himself, but if you don't know Chris Gordon, you've been living under a rock or haven't been in the Houston area. And so I know he's staffed at Mount Sinai, but he's going to give us other details. But please help us welcome to the studio the Right Reverend Elder, Bishop Doctor, Chris Gordon. Chris, good to have
Esquire.
you, man. Thank you. Esquire.
Bless you all for the kind introduction. I'm glad to be here. I really am.
Man, good to have you. Hey, listen, tell us your story, your call in the ministry, what that was like, and then where you are in your education. You are, and I give it to y'all. Y'all the brains.
I don't know about y'all.
That's how I live on Sunday.
That's why I asked you.
Here, right? That's why I live on Sunday morning. I just repeat after y'all. just tell us where you are, where you are with your education.
Right. My I guess you can say my calling was different. From 6th grade, I had in mind I'm going to be an attorney. I'm going to make a lot of money, and I was on the debate team from 6th grade all the way to 12th grade, and was co-captain of the debate team. I did debate for a lot of years, and then I went to college, and I said I'm gonna join the debate team. I'm gonna do political science, and I'm gonna come out and I'm gonna go to law school. And then around that time is when I really got saved. And so between my senior year in high school, my freshman year in college, the Lord just dried up all my zeal to practice law, to do debate or anything like that. And I knew that what I was learning was life changing. And it was almost like Christianity was brand new to me. I had been raised in a church, and so all my life was baptized at 7. And so I knew how to speak the language. I knew all the stuff to say. What they say about ministry is dangerous. The dangerous thing about ministry is that you can learn it. And so I had learned all the stuff to say. I knew how to talk like a Christian, how to answer the questions in a certain way. But I did not know who Jesus was for myself. And so when I really got saved, it was like this thing was brand new to me. And I knew I was going to spend the rest of my life kind of pursuing and uncovering and learning more about his revelations and what it means that this God and this Jesus who died for me and who lives in me and who's pushing me and talking to me and walking me along my path in this journey of life. So from there, left Texas Southern and knew I wanted to pursue something that kind of enhanced me, equipped me to go off to seminary. So I took up philosophy, then I took up religious studies, then ended up taking more religious studies than I could do in philosophy. And so I ended up having way more religious studies credits, and then it outnumbered my philosophy major credits. So did that and went off to Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in Fort Worth. Did some time there, then ended up transferring to Truett Seminary, Baylor University. Finished there, and it turned out really well. And Lord brought me back to Houston, and so fast forward, I guess like 7 years in between. I'm trying to finish at Houston Baptist University, but they won't let me be great. So I was supposed to be finishing in May, but my dissertation committee, my dissertation chair is giving me a lot of pushback and resistance. But I'm not gonna yield. I'm gonna keep pushing even further. So
I should not be moved.
Right?
Yeah. Right. So that's kind of, and I've been kind of just chasing wherever the Lord is at work. I just want to be relevant into whatever he's doing, whether it be in the church, outside the church, or just, it's a big world out here. It's a lot of people. So yeah.
Man, you've been doing a great job. I joked with another senior pastor some months ago. just kind of sharing like everybody needs a Chris. Like I wish we all can have one. I think, and I'm not saying this just because you're here. I think you're the voice for this generation. This generation is my grandmother would say we grow wiser but get weaker. So and I think this generation, you have to be able to stand and speak in in power, but also in knowledge, and that's something you definitely have. And then on top of that, you're a real one. Like Chris ain't scared to say the truth, man, and that's what
he is not scared.
And again, that's man, the premise, and I don't know if Shawn said like the premise of the podcast was like, truth be told, because it's so much that we'll either lie about or just refuse to be honest about, or try to code it in pretty language instead of just giving it, like it is. And I think that slows our culture down from being and doing. And so I'm gonna give you this first one. I'm gonna let Shawn have it. I know he got a bunch, but a couple weeks ago, Shawn sent me a clip. I can't remember what it was on. You might have been on someone else's podcast, and you were talking about dating and the scene and how much the scene has changed and shifted, and how us in our own biblical bubble, sometimes we do our young girls a disservice. Saying he that findeth the wife findeth a good thing, and so we force our girls to go into hiding. And I told Shawn when we did, and I'm talking about, I'm like, it's almost like looking for a job. Like, I'm gonna find a job, but that job wants me to find it.
Right.
So it's gonna put out postings. It's gonna, and I think, like, especially because like family has changed, and one of the changes of family is how it begins, which is that dating thing. So if you could give like any direction to a young woman looking like outside of that box that that we've learned to live in, like what would it be?
The first thing I would probably tell her is I would throw off a lot of the stuff that was taught in church on dating, because I think. And we're all Christians. We're all Christians. We're believers. We're not atheists saying this. I think a lot of the stuff that was taught probably within the last 30 years on dating and all this stuff has done a disservice. And you look at the fruits of it, like when Jesus talked about, but wisdom is justified by her children. The fruits of it is we don't have a lot of marriages. And like when I was growing up, they used to say, they used to hit us saying, always thrown out, the divorce rate is 50%, and church is worse. We used to always hear that growing up in the 90s. And so we used to wonder, why shouldn't it be better in the church? Why is it worse? And you look at the state of relationships today, and I always had a saying, if black women ever figured it out, because right now black women are the least married demographic, and people that are pro-black women and people that are, I guess you could say pro-manosphere, pro-men, they both recite that 26% marital rate. So that's saying that 1 out of 4. So no matter which side you're on, they both said that 1 out of 4 black women will be married. So that's not a slanted toward one.
That's the data.
Right. That's the data. So I always say this: if black women ever figured it out, how to get married at a better rate than 1 out of 4, I say, who would be last on that list to get it? Black Christian women. Because black Christian women are the only group that I visit, and I'm a minister, I'm a millennial, and I get to connect with a lot of young adult groups around the city of Houston. And I found that only amongst these young adult black women, Christian women group, can you have just huge cauldrons of black Christian women who are single, and I would call them chronically single, notoriously single. And I'm talking not even single like I'm not engaged. I'm talking I haven't been on a date in 2 to 3 years.
Single.
Yeah. And it's just like, what's going on?
That's past single. That's alone.
And I'm listening to their stories, and they'll start saying and quoting all these sayings that they heard at these churches and messages as if it's ascribed to them righteousness by not getting out there and doing it. Oh, I haven't been on a date in 3 years. And they think that God's going to like credit them righteousness toward their account. Right. And I'm just like, no. And so that's one of the reasons why I had to say what I said on that clip is like, that Christian women are the worst at dating. And because Christian women are taught falsely that the man is going to do all this. Or if it's not the man, God's going to do all this. And they're the most passive when it comes to women on the dating market because, they've been taught that, oh, he that fine. So I can just do what I want and he's just going to come find me. It's up to God and him to find me. And then you even hear how they talk and, well, God haven't sent him yet. Here I am, God, send my man. And it's just like, it's the wrong thing to tell women, and it makes them so passive. And I always challenge them with this: show me biblically where women were more as passive as you are. I mean, you look at, and I always use Ruth as an illustration because everybody loves Boaz more than they love Jesus. So, so they say, they want him. That's the man that they want. We'll take Jesus later, but give us Boaz now. So I mean, and you look at what it took to get a Boaz. And I preached a series on Ruth. And when I got to Ruth 2, and Naomi's giving Ruth the roadmap to get Boaz. And I counted 8 to 9 action items that Ruth had to get out there and do in order to get Boaz. I'm sorry, in Ruth chapter 3. I'm sorry. Because Ruth chapter 2 is when they kind of encountered each other. But Ruth chapter 3 is when Naomi gives her the roadmap to say, hey, my daughter, go down there, get dressed, take a shower, look pretty, do all this stuff. Don't let him see you. Do this, lay at his feet. And she gives her 8 to 9 different things that she had to get out there and do. Now, not one time did she say, stay in your house. He's going to come find you.
Right.
I mean, and
or
so
wear your bonnet to go around the corner to Walgreens.
Thank you. He'll just accept you as you are. Because
you swinging, he being messy.
I'm not being messy.
Nah. I'll say.
Hey,
that's fine.
How you say it? I wasn't trying to hit. I wasn't trying to miss.
I wasn't aiming at nobody, but I ain't trying to miss nobody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the deal. So a hit dog will holler.
Yeah. So I always say, and let's say there's 4,000. Oh, let's say this. Okay, fine. But that's the Bible. That was archaic. That was 4,000 years ago. Okay, cool. Well, let me ask you this: were your grandmothers as passive as you are? My grandmother wasn't. Struggling to get married one time. And so I'm just saying, we've taught them wrong. And so I like, part of me don't really even like, because when I deal with Christian women and all that stuff like that, and even when I talk to my boys who are ministers, they don't want to date them. Because they want a woman who's a believer. Now, I'm not saying they want an atheist. They want a woman who's a believer, but they don't want the woman who's at church 5 days out of the week and all that stuff. Listen, because it's like, my boy who just got engaged, he said, I wanted a woman who had more real life experiences than always getting what was taught to her. Wow. Because you guys are ministers. I'm ministers. We are called to be the priest of our household. So if you got a woman who's learning all this stuff and all this stuff, it's like, look, I'm going to have to instruct you on how it is because I'm going to be ultimately your priest and your covering. Right. So I'm ultimately going to be the one instructing you. Right. I'm not going to listen to you, which quote with the flowers or what Michael Todd or what T.D. Jakes told you.
Right. No. That's I can't remember who. During the time where we started getting, our ears got big and we started listening to everything. Mm-hmm. I want to say Manuel Scott, but I could be wrong. His members start coming to church saying, well, Reverend such and such says this, Reverend such and such said this, Reverend such and such said this. And he said on Sunday mornings, y'all don't need a word, y'all need an enema. You need to be cleaned out from all that junk that you've been, and that's what's wrong with that. They're just, eating at everybody's table, and that because you have some young women that are so single that they've just, sat back and said, okay, well, marriage is something that I don't even want. Mm-hmm. And so you're relying to live life the rest of your life single, and then we'll make it seem like because there's no good men. And and there had and I wouldn't I'm not trying to discredit. That's probably part of it, but part of it is you got to do some stuff.
Well, I mean, if talking about Proverbs 18:22, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. Most of the time, people put the emphasis on the word "find."
Yeah.
Instead of putting the emphasis on wife.
Or even God. Or like when they say obtaining favor from the Lord.
Right. Well, here's where I'm going with it, is that he cannot find that which does not exist. If you're
I told you he's being messy.
No. I'm not being. I don't think I'm being messy. I'm not trying to.
I think you do, but I
think it's just a shirt.
I love
you just think I'm being messy.
I want to go with it. Be messy. Come on. What you got? What you got?
No. Think about it like this. Just grammatically, he who finds a wife.
So she's a wife before he finds her.
She's a wife before he finds her, and there's not enough emphasis on becoming the wife that would be found. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so now, what's his name? DJ Academics. I wouldn't suggest his approach, but he wanted to vocalize that he was the prize.
Oh yeah.
You remember in the hotel?
When he was yelling at the
he was. Now I don't agree with the method, but I understand the message in the sense of, hey, he has over time built himself up to be a man of a particular stature and station, and it seems like nowadays that there's not as much of an appreciation for men. That it's an issue if you think of yourself properly, that, hey, you're a good catch.
Right.
Because women are always, I'm the prize.
Right.
And so it's like, almost like there's not a lot of effort in terms of gaining the attention of the man.
I want to hit that.
Oh, you're up.
Oh, okay.
You're at bat.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That is so true. And I'm glad you brought that up, because like we've seen that within the last few years, and this was not the case even for our grandparents' generation or even biblical generation. This emphasis on the woman as the prize and things like that. What I found is that there's been a reordering of the roles. So the roles that were traditionally reserved for man, now you see women saying, I want to be in that role. Like even my family, I had a little sister who was talking about, I want somebody to help me, and I want somebody who's going to do this. And I say, listen, you're not going to get somebody to help you. You're supposed to be the help.
Yeah.
And that's my
helpmate.
Yeah,
right.
You are the helpmate. And when I hear like even how ladies talk about relationships, and I'm saying, you don't want a husband, you want a wife.
right.
Like
right,
you want a wife.
Right.
And that's what's up. Like we see this reordering of the roles where, well, if I have a job now, then I should be in charge, and I'm this. And I mean, and I said this on another clip. I don't like women who had that woman king energy. I don't want a woman king.
Yeah.
You can be queen, but it's this reordering of the roles to where, and it starts even during the dating sphere, to where he needs to come after me, and he needs to do all these things, and if I choose him, then great. But look at the Bible. The Bible was not like that. The Bible puts most of its importance on what can the woman do to please her husband. What can the woman? I mean, because and they say all this stuff. Oh well, that's then they want to get. Then they stop quoting scripture.
Right.
Because now they want to say, well,
biblical antiquity.
Right. The Bible was patriarchal and women didn't have rights and all that stuff like that.
Paul said that. Jesus didn't.
Right. But it's
all of a sudden they want to.
It's this reordering of the roles, and it starts even in the dating sphere. And so that's why I tell men, like, even in dating, if she's having you do all this stuff, I mean, I had a young lady. Christian young ladies, and she quoted to me, "I'm the prize." When she said that, I was done, because it's like, listen,
Give me book, chapter, and verse for that, please.
I'm paying for everything and all this stuff like that, and we made a wager, and the wager was like, if I win, you have to cook something, and she was like, I'm not gonna cook anything, and it was like, well, I done paid for these expensive dates, so that's nothing but what you cook, and she
that
said,
should come along with it without a wager.
absolutely
Right.
So, but even with the way she said, I'm the prize, and I was just like, I gotta get rid of this, because if I was to continue on, I've seen, we think it's cute and harmless in dating, but it's the sad thing when you see couples getting marital counseling, and it's because a woman has this set of expectations that a lifestyle that she deserves, and a man is trying, but it's not happening at the right timing that she wants it and expects it. And so I've seen some, I'm old enough to see some of my friends get divorced, and even seen couples in marriage counseling fighting over this issue of the woman thinks that she has a certain lifestyle and deserves a certain, and the guy is trying, and he's still the man that you married, that you met, but he's trying to give her this thing that she thinks she deserves, and it's like, listen, sweetheart, it don't work like that.
Well, see, I think some of that stems from what I call DPS, Disney Princess Syndrome.
Absolutely.
And so, Moten's laughing.
Absolutely messy, man.
It's true. It's true. Truth be told. So think about Disney Princess Syndrome. Okay, so it means that Disney, through their different stories that they've told, have told you to follow your heart.
Lies.
And what does the Bible say about the heart?
Heart is deceitful.
Deceitful. It's wicked.
Yeah.
But Disney would tell you, follow your heart. That no matter what mistakes you make, there will be some man that will come to clean up the mess you made. And in the end, you will live in a castle with a beautiful dress, or whatever the case may be, and happily ever after. Does that make sense? DPS.
And is it working?
It's not.
Yeah. And you see the culture.
It's not.
You see
It's not. Well, it's working for somebody. It's working for the corporations who are setting themselves up to profit off of the women that are going to be single.
Right, okay.
And so now they've just duplicated the amount of households that they can draw from. But I'm already looking at certain investments, single serving meals, all that different stuff. Wine. I'm looking at investing in all single person consumables.
You finna buy
cat food. Invest in cat
now
food.
You say I'm messy.
Invest in cat food. I'm telling you, listen, if you want to be rich, look, I'm telling you right now, you go thank the Truth Be Told show for this. Start investing in cat food, pet products, wine.
I'm gonna look directly in the camera. This is not financial advice.
Tinder for 40-year-olds. 40 plus.
This is not financial advice. Consult
40 plus. Yeah.
Consult your financial planner.
In that travel.
Yeah.
Invest in travel, because they gotta travel and all that stuff like that.
The travel thing is huge.
Yeah.
But here's where these expectations come from. They start in childhood. You want to talk about grooming. You got DPS while they're young. Then when they get to be adolescent, then now we have Instagram, we have TikTok that are showing the modern version of the lifestyles of rich and famous. They're looking at the actors, the athletes, the entertainers, and what their lifestyle is, and saying, well, they should have that, I should have it. And I've been told that I'm a 10 out of 10. I'm perfect. There's nothing that I can improve on. I am the object and image of perfection, and you should, provide for me. You are free to do as I tell you. And so I just need a man to now enable my fantasy to become a reality.
Right.
And I want to draw back to, because this is where the church comes in, because like we know Disney, Hallmark, Tyler Perry, all these things have put up these images that just, hold, like, no matter what you do, it's gonna work out for you, and a man's gonna be like, I remember I was we saw that movie, Why Did I Get Married? Have y'all seen that? The woman killed her husband and still was rewarded with $1 billion at the end. I was like, she killed her man. He was trying to get away from her and got killed because she drove him there, and she still gets rewarded with a billionaire who wants to take her out to lunch at the end. I say, if this
is pretty womanization.
Yeah. Yeah, no matter what I do. Yeah. Julia Roberts, Richard Gere.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. So it's like, hey, you can go and do whatever. You can go and have all these exploits, have other men use your body, all that different stuff, and that takes off 0 points. That takes off 0 points. You can make all the mistakes. You can make, just live your life, follow your heart, go through whatever phases you want to go, whatever numbers they add up to. All that different stuff. But hey, you know what? Whenever you decide to finally figure out that, hey, you know what? The DM starts slowing down. You're 31 years old.
Got some miles now.
All that different stuff, blah, blah, blah. Now it's like, okay, well, hey, now let me go. Now
let me get for real.
Let me go to the church, and I'm a born again virgin.
Yeah.
With 3 children.
Wait, let me tell y'all this part. I don't feel bad about saying these things because, like, the church that I serve is an older church. So I probably, membership is probably majority 60 plus, or let's say at least 55 plus. That's majority of our membership. And when I start saying things like that, some person my age or younger, oh, you hate women and all this stuff like that. Right. I don't mind hearing that from them. And I always say this, okay, listen, when I talk to members of my church, and I share this stuff with them, they tell me, I feel sorry for you, young man, because you got a date in this generation. Like it's not a women thing, it's a younger woman thing. Because the older women, they're looking at y'all like, we don't recognize y'all.
Right.
Like, I have a bunch of older women who always, and they're on social media now because of the pandemic. They've all had to get on social media to keep up with service. And they'll tell, did you see what so-and-so did? What are these young girls doing? I feel sorry. See, like, let's say 15 years ago, for me to say, man, for me to be single, like, people didn't understand. There's so many good women out there. But now that social media is out there and they see how they behave and how they put themselves out there, older women are looking like, I feel sorry for you. Or they're telling me, I'm praying for you. I'm really praying for you.
Well, and that's, the thing is that reality is telling you and giving you your report card.
Yeah.
But people refuse to read it. They don't want to see the report card that reality is handing them. And to me, same thing is like, I hear the same thing sometimes, but it's not to be mean. It's to be realistic.
Yeah.
Is that there's a particular window of opportunity from age 18 up to a certain age. Childbearing years are limited.
Absolutely.
This is just a biological fact, and I know that our current context and culture has difficulty understanding biological facts.
I told you.
I know where he's going. I love it.
Okay, let me ask both of y'all this, because we started talking about time, and nobody, young or old, has time to play with.
None.
And so, in this generation where roles are reversed, and whatever you regret, whatever you're reluctant about today, you'll regret tomorrow. So if it's almost like I have a family member who married a young woman. He's Nan's complaining like, man, she don't never cook. Well, did she cook when y'all was dating? Well, no. Well, you whatever you're reluctant about today, you're gonna regret tomorrow. So at what point should a young man who's dating see signs and be like, you know what, long term, this ain't gonna work out?
So,
I mean, one sign, two signs.
I'll defer to my guest. I have a whole different view on that.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
You have. Yeah. So I'll go ahead. Okay. So I don't think that you should wait for flags. I think you should set checkpoints. The whole idea of waiting for red flags to me is the wrong approach for the man. I'll just tell you a little bit about my strategy whenever I was dating is that I didn't wait to find red flags to pop up. I set checkpoints. So I said, okay, well, I'm dating this young lady. Let's have a little period where we're getting to know each other. Okay, we don't want to get, too serious into all the questions right out the gate. We don't want it to be like an interview or, interrogation or anything. But there's a certain time period where it's like, hey, I have to set a checkpoint that, hey, how do you deal with conflict? What is your capacity to converse about things other than what you saw on Instagram?
So this is just conversation?
Can you cook? Well, it's conversation and action.
Okay.
So it's like, okay.
Because I was just going to say, people lie.
No. But you can do it. You can do it in different ways.
Okay.
So like, say, for instance, my first date was always in the morning. I would usually set first dates for breakfast early in the morning because most people are not disciplined enough to get up. So if
That's another checkpoint, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So first checkpoint, because here's the deal: you're not gonna meet me for breakfast.
So, man, you should have been a private investigator, man. Something wrong with you.
No, it works.
Hey, I'm just telling you.
It works.
I'm just telling you. And this is. Hey, I got married. Okay. So I'm just, but here's the deal. Number one, sometimes people are confused whether or not the girl likes them. Okay. Here's how you'll know they like you. If you invite them to breakfast at 7:30 in the morning, they like you if they show up.
Yeah.
There's no coincidence about waking up and meeting somebody at 7:30 in the morning for breakfast.
Yeah.
There's no happenstance. That's intentional.
Yeah.
And if there's a bunch of pushback, and so number one, I see if you have discipline.
Okay. I
see if you're running the streets out at night. Number three, I get a better idea of what you really look like.
That's another one. I knew where he was going when he said it.
To copy off 94.5 The Buzz is the fresh out of bed head to head. I want to see what you really look like when you don't have a lot of time to prepare, when you're not doing all this different stuff.
How do you wake up?
How do you wake up? And I'm not talking about, Folgers in your cup. I want to see, So a breakfast date is very intentional and it's usually quiet conversation, good conversation, so on and so forth, Next, a lunch or coffee date. Okay. Light, public. If there's a big problem, easy to get up and walk away. Not a big investment. And if you got a problem with the breakfast date and a problem with the lunch date, then now you're just trying to extract resources.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So I'm also setting a checkpoint, or really not a checkpoint, but it's a filter for the resource extractors.
Right.
Because they're out there.
Right.
There's videos all over how to finesse a man.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So this is the anti-finesse mechanism.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I sent you that one video, and that guy and I disagree with his thought process, but I agree with his premise when he said, hey, if we have to go a certain period of time before we get physical, then I want to go that same period of time before I spend.
Oh, the 90-day rule.
Yeah. Because he was like, there's no sense in me going on taking you out on a dinner date and spending $300.
Right.
And, and just to find out after 4 or 5 of these that you were never into it, to begin with,
Right.
So.
But yeah, then after that, if we clear 1 and 2, then all right, cool. Now we go to something that's more significant, dinner date.
You graduated.
You see what I'm saying?
Welcome to the next phase.
But that's the deal. And then from there, then after that, then we need to see can you cook? And I'm not saying full blown. Just something. I'll buy the groceries. I'll use all that different stuff. You can come cook at my house. Because like to the men, I'm a big believer. Before you get a wife, have a life. Before you get a spouse, get a house. That way there will be no hassle in your castle.
I mean, I get
this was just my strategy. Does that make sense?
Checkpoints.
This was just my strategy. So the red flag thing, I'm like, hey, if you want to wait around, that takes a long time too.
Yeah.
Checkpoints speeds up the process that you can gather as much information as possible in a shorter amount of time and or dates. Does that make sense?
Right.
But that's dating with intention.
Right.
That I'm dating with the intention of filtering out whether or not, first, are you a wife? Then if I determine you are a wife,
Are you my wife?
are you my wife?
Right.
Yeah.
I feel it.
Yeah.
So
I feel it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I told you.
just my few little notes.
I don't know, but and even with that, older women were, and it didn't seem as though they were active, but they were active.
Mm-hmm.
I told you a couple weeks ago I was at Priest Greg's church
Anniversary.
his pastor's
anniversary, yeah.
and his mom and dad were there. And they gave an award to his dad. He founded the church. Edward Cotter's great guy. And he stood up and said he was, in their home church, he was teaching Sunday school. And Sister Collins would come and sit in Sunday school class. He said, man, I thought she wanted to know something about the Lord. she was in there trying to,
Scoping him. Yeah.
After 60 years of marriage, he gets his award, whatever, they clap, whatever. She got up, she said, I got it.
See?
So, I mean, even though, I just think for this generation, we are teaching inactivity and entitlement to our young women.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, entitlement, that's a big one.
I don't mean to cut you.
No, you're good.
Okay. I like what you said about the checkpoints. Me, I dive straight into it. I ask them questions, and because women have too much bravado these days, and they are so consumed with pride that they not only do they not feel any shame or any type of humbleness about what they want, but they're very boastful about what they want. Wow. To where, a woman has no problem telling you, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing, no man in sight ain't had a boyfriend in 3 years, but they will tell you all what they demand and what they not gonna do. And I'm just like, okay, well,
how's that working out for you?
I know. I say, like I tell them, Christian men, look at what all they're saying, avoid them, and
mark and avoid.
Yeah, they have no problem telling you what. So I'll ask them about, like, can you cook? Do you cook? I'm not checking to see if they're a good cook, because I don't care about that. What I care about, are they willing to
ability can be developed.
Absolutely. My stepmother could not cook when she met my dad, but she started grabbing recipe books and start putting in the effort. If you a bad cook and you try, hey babe, add a little bit more paprika. Don't burn the grits. Take the cornbread out. It's a little hard. Like you could teach somebody who's willing. So I would rather a woman who is a bad cook than these girls. I just don't. It's like, well, what good are you? I can read, I just don't read. Well, you have the same results as the man who can't read. Both of y'all avoid books. You know what I'm saying?
I love it.
So you'll never be able if you're not willing. Mm-hmm. And if you're not willing, it doesn't even matter if you're able.
Right. Exactly. Right. So I have no problem, talking about cooking and things like that. And for me, and I'm gonna talk because cooking is so important. And that's one of the reasons that I think modern women are struggling so much, because cooking is off the table. I'm gonna tell you why cooking is so underrated. Is because what we've reduced nowadays to dating, cooking, if we take that off the table, then the man is responsible for paying for every date and things like that. And cooking was one of those ways. And I tell young ladies is, don't be afraid to cook and all this stuff like that. And with the emotional state that ladies are in these days, they are so afraid to show emotions and feelings. So not only have they taken cooking off the table, but they've taken emotion and feelings off the table. So now you have pretty much reduced dating to everything is on the man. And how do you show your appreciation? And I tell them, we need to bring back cooking inside of dating, because cooking is a way that women can show appreciation without giving up their bodies.
Make kitchens great again.
Yeah, like when we removed cooking off the table, if a guy's paying for dates, a guy doing all this stuff, picking you up and all this stuff, how do you show appreciation? The only way that women know how to show appreciation is by giving up their bodies. Because they don't know how to write letters. They don't know how to express feelings because they're so afraid of that. They're guarding their heart. But cooking was a nice medium way that you could show appreciation without having to give up your bodies. They don't want to cook, but they'll give up their bodies to earn those dates and all this stuff like that. Where is that getting you? You know, I mean, I had to check a young lady who was talking about she was dating a man who, and she had a child before, but she was dating another man, and he asked her to iron, and she was just like, no, I'm not ironing. You know, no wifely duties without wifely status. And she was quoting that girl in Atlanta, that Pinky Promise girl who told them all that stuff about what they need to acquire of a man. And I had to say this and stop saying that. You're gonna end up single even more. I was like, ironing ain't what got you pregnant. You know, the Bible is clear on what you should not do before marriage. But ironing didn't get you knocked up. Man, get in there and iron that shirt and all that stuff like that. I mean, yeah, y'all want to avoid the stuff that don't really, you know what I'm saying? Y'all but y'all do all the stuff that don't.
And it's disingenuous.
It is.
Because if you were to tie that to a man's resources, and a man were to say, well, you know,
no husbandly duties.
No husbandly duties without husbandly status. Yeah, they'd be like,
two checks, please.
Are you you crazy?
Right.
You know, so there's no problem.
So yeah, give me this. What you said cooking, and what are some other non-negotiables for men that even dating young men should say, hey, look, you're going to do this or we don't have a future?
I think I look for things early. And if a woman's not doing these things early, cooking is one of them. But also being able to call me. If I'm always calling you, and if I don't call you, our conversation ends.
Right.
That's a woman who's not putting forth any effort.
Right.
Effort reflects interest. And if you're not putting any effort, then I mean, I'm gonna say you're not interested. Because if I have to call you, we're dealing with a one-way street, fellas. If you dealing with a woman who always, you know, she can't text you good morning, she can't say how was your day, she can't initiate everything, you always have to call her and all this, man, walk away, because you'll be carrying her luggage through marriage. You'll be always doing the stuff, and she'll be the Simon Cowell of the group where she just sits back and rates you. And I'm just because I get tired of these women, and I hear this stuff amongst Christian women, and because, you know, I hear that stuff, and that's why I just like, man, it's so many unfit Christian women, and I love sisters, I love our women, I do, but it's just like when they start talking about, well, I'll let a man lead if he can lead, and I'm just like, listen, you are not the Simon Cowell for his leadership. You know, you either gonna get in line with his leadership or you not. You know, it's not up to you to rate and give him hold up a scorecard where you get a 10 today, but yesterday you was at a 7. You know, like. Listen, man, the vice president does not ever give a president a rating. You know, you don't do your job if your manager can lead.
Right.
You don't do your job if you're and I'm just like, man, submission don't go like that. You either go be a part of this man's team, or if you're not. Decide right now if you want to be with him by if you can submit to him. If you can't, keep it moving.
Right.
Yeah, man.
And that's biblical.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
God gave man dominion.
Yeah.
No man is finna fight a woman. If he can't have dominion where he is, he's going to go somewhere else. Yeah. Where he can.
Like overseas. You know where I'm going. You know where I'm going. He'll go overseas to fly. He will fly. He will get, I mean, passport numbers are on the rise.
They are. And like, people can't even get in.
Yeah, because it's so backed up. So many people will go overseas to get what they want. Because, and I have my passport. And I mean, I'm not an advocate for it, but I'm saying I've experienced women of other cultures and women in America. I don't mind dating both of them. I see the perks of both. But one of the things that I find overseas is when it comes to traditional women and the women of scripture of the Bible, they look more like them overseas. Mm-hmm. The overseas women look more like Ruth. The overseas women look more like Abigail. They look like the women of the scriptures that I was told about. I mean, women in our culture, they look like Oprah. And I don't want to get with Oprah. I don't want Viola Davis. I'm not trying to marry the woman king, you know. And they want these traditional men, but you moving like Oprah and Taraji P. Henson. I don't want and they are single. Right. You're trying to be Tracy Ellis Ross. You know, and y'all are all single following this path and think a guy just want to come along and I want to pay all your bills and I want to finance your independence.
Right.
Sure,
right.
Guys,
come on.
Guys, we ain't signing up for that.
Yeah. If you end up being Tracy Ellis Ross, you will be right where she was with her girlfriends.
Right.
Yeah.
Right on that show.
Y'all can have
girlfriends broke up with her.
Exactly.
Thank you. Y'all can have living single and girlfriends and all that and girls trip and all this. Y'all can have all that. Just know and trust me. And I'm out because I see them. Like I go to 13 and there's 8 of them at a table. Mm-hmm. Shoot, I go to Mastro's and there's 6 of them.
No, but I mean that's the 13s and Mastro's, the big table of single women. I mean, it's almost always the same.
Absolutely.
And everybody is ordering an appetizer, and then they're bouncing. That's why that's the reason why at Steak 48 they set the $100 minimum.
Yeah.
Because people were coming in just to take big pictures in big groups, and everybody was sharing appetizers.
Yeah.
You know,
so with lemons.
Or
you see what I'm saying? And so they're like, no, that's not what we didn't set up this to be your selfie studio.
Right.
Just to say that, I was here and this and that.
Tag
blah,
yourself
blah, blah,
in.
tag yourself
And they always posting in front of it with their little dress. And that's why they have to institute a dress code too, because they show. I mean, when I'm overseas or when I'm traveling overseas, like, and I'll go out even overseas. If I see a big group of like American women, it's always by themselves. It's always like 6 of them, 8 of them, and it's just like, man, like unless you want to do that for the rest of your life, you might want to let go of this like independent, strong woman stuff because it's not giving you the outcomes that you really want.
And there you go, the outcomes.
Right.
Because single women keep women single.
Absolutely.
If you stay, I know that made you, but it's true.
Hey.
It's true. You know, and it's like, hey, I'm not saying don't. One thing I appreciate a lot about my wife and our relationship is that we are interdependent.
Absolutely.
She had her own life and has her own life with her own friends. I pop into that, you know, from time to time, so on and so forth. I have my own life and my own friend. She pops into that from time to time. There's overlap and whatnot, but we are comfortable being together, and we're comfortable being by ourselves or with, you know, our different circles,
right?
And in the overlap, you know. But you know, that interdependence, I think, sometimes scares women. Because they've been told, and I mean, they literally spelled it out.
Right.
You know, in songs, they have spelled it out that they're supposed to be independent.
I'm a X y'all that you got. I'm gonna X y'all this, and then we can move because I really want to be in Chris's ear about something else before we move on.
Oh yeah.
Do you think part of it is how we raise our girls too? We had maybe a month ago, me and Shash, we had to do this video. I saw this video. This little girl, her mom gave her for her birthday a Tesla, and the girl went left.
I saw y'all video on that.
I saw that. Was like, no, I don't want no.
She wanted a pink
Mercedes. And so her mom, trying to, you know, give her child the things she wasn't given, like, okay, I just got to go get her a pink Mercedes. But I'm like, now. You messed her up. Now what young man is going to take someone with all of this attitude and, you know, she don't get
entitlement.
Like, now he can't, like, no, she's no good for relationships. Because now it always has to go her way or not at all, or she's going to act like she did with her mom. So, like, part of, even outside of a church group, I think sometimes how we raise our girls is detrimental to relationships as well. And I don't know if y'all had any kind of,
I would say absolutely. I would say absolutely. How we raised our I would say definitely how. Like to go back to your original question is, do you think how we raised them has some bearing to it? Yes, absolutely. I always call them that princess syndrome, where we raise them to be princesses, and I think we do a disservice to them. Even we spoil them early because we told them that they're princesses before they ever do anything. I mean, even when she's 2 or 3, you can tell her, pick up after yourself, put up your toys, keep your room clean, those things. You're not princess, and you don't get whatever you want just by smiling and because you're my baby.
Right.
Like, you can give them things that they should do. No, cross your legs, be a lady, and we can start girls at an early age learning those things because you look at, if you start them at that princess now, then you'll fast forward and she'll be 22 saying I'm a queen, and I'm just like, no. And I mean, I look at our mother's generation and the way, I mean, you see that that it's definitely a time problem, because you look at how men revere their mothers with so much esteem, and their grandmothers. We love our grandmothers. Sometimes we love our grandmother's generation more than our mothers. And you look at how we revere that group, how we kind of look at them as queens. Those were queens, the Maya Angelou, Cicely Tyson generation. Right. And those were queens. Right. But why were they queens? Because what they did for us. Those are the women who cooked for us, who bandaged our wounds, who encouraged us, and they made us feel like when we were not handsome, they called us we were handsome. You a handsome young man, and you look good, and don't you worry about what those people affirmed us at an early age. So yes, we look back and we queen them. But the woman who I'm dating on the first date, you're not a queen. You're not. I tell them, listen, I don't do that queen stuff. And I deal with people in our community say, well, we was queens. We were kings and queens. No, we wasn't. All of us, really? All of us?
There were some.
All of us?
But not all.
Yeah, we can't all be kings and queens. Right, somebody had to sweep the floor. Somebody had to check the mail. And we were kings and queens in Africa. No, we wasn't. And everybody wasn't no kings and queens. Somebody had to sweep up after the elephant. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, come on, like we say this stuff that, and so it just brings out this kind of royalty and this entitlement. I squash all that from day one, and I said, listen, I'll be a gentleman. I'll be that, and you be a lady.
There you go.
And let's start from there. 5, 10, 15 years later, and once we establish and proven, and you loyal and all, yeah, you can be my queen. Right. And I've heard married men say, man, my wife, she can get whatever she want, because that woman is proving herself. Man, she ain't got to ask for nothing. If I got it, it's hers.
Correct.
And so we've programmed, I think we've started early, and we program our sisters, and we program ladies to have these entitlement and to have these expectations, and it started off with good intentions. It started off toward empowerment, and we wanted to empower our sisters, which is a great thing. And I'm all for sisters empowerment. Right. Like
know your worth and all this.
Yeah, I want sisters to do well. I have no problem with sisters advancing and all that stuff like that. But it's a problem when those same advancement is weaponized against the men of your own community. Right. So now that you've achieved so much, now you look down upon the people of your community. And I go back to Martin Luther King. Our people have never been one to look down on anybody. When you look at Dr. Martin Luther King, college graduate at early, finished high school at 15, graduated early, and was never above the common man. But now we have women who, because you got your MBA at Prairie View, now you looking up high. And I'm just like sisters, bring it down a notch, you know? Like, listen, man, you are not above any common man. And our people were never defined by degrees or status and all that stuff like that, because the moment you walked in a church, Martin Luther King told you that's the place where you ought to leave all of that stuff at the door. And we all become servants.
Right. And I think even with, it's more, I think it's more about possession than position. It's like, it's not just you being a queen. It's you being my queen.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen on the first date or the first year.
Not at all.
Or maybe not even the second year. You know what I'm saying? It's you know, I don't expect you to have the same level of value for Erica as I do.
Right.
Because she's my wife. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, and so again, that's just, I think sometimes we focus on that wrong thing, but it's the generation in media and everybody's a queen and king and, you know. Yeah.
Man, I tell them, man, don't call me king. Good morning, king. No, I'm not no king. I'm not a king.
Unfollow.
Yeah, I stopped
Delete.
that. Like, trust. I mean, because I take that across the board.
Right,
Listen, I'm not no king.
Right. That's the deal.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, young women, the cheat code is this. If you show a man respect and give him peace, it will go well with you in the land.
Absolutely.
That's it. That's the two things men are really looking for. Respect me and be an active participant in peace in the home.
Right.
If you can get yourself there,
We good.
young women, and you focus on that and doing what you were designed to do by your creator, which is to bear children.
Yeah.
That's where you're fulfilling your purpose.
Yeah.
And that's evidenced in your design. That's not the patriarchy.
Dude, messy, man.
Well, no, I'm just saying.
I love it.
It's not the patriarchy. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. Now, I love it. One of the things, and I'm a man, we gotta have Chris back. I'm a flip a minute because one of the things that Chris just won my heart. He because he said something that was on my that I needed, that I was thinking, and to hear it out loud, I'm like, oh yeah, he got my respect for this one. So, and you know, you can give us details, Sean, but it was about a particular conference.
Conference.
And again, like we just talked about another conference a couple weeks ago, and I'm just very, very leery about, one, where I spend my time, and then two, where I spend my money. So if I go somewhere for some days to a conference, I want to be made better.
And Chris, we were already talking about this 2 episodes ago.
Yeah,
I'm fine with
Like
it.
in general, we had the conference conversation.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I just want to be made better, and so I don't, because I'm not. Hey man, I can waste my own time.
Yeah.
Right.
I can watch grass grow, paint dry. I can sit and do nothing.
Golden Girls Marathon.
And, and so if I go somewhere to be made better, I want to be made better.
Right.
So there was a particular conference. I'm not gonna give details unless y'all want to, because I ain't scared.
I'm fine.
The conference was basically older preachers that had done great work, and this is not a diminish on their work. They had done great work, but for us, context is everything.
Right.
Like, you grew when? You grew how?
Well, let me just read.
Okay.
Let me just offer the quote.
Okay.
And then what say ye? You know?
Yeah.
So Chris summarized a particular conference as this: an old man conference taught by old men whose churches grew in the 90s, peaked in 2000, while I'm in 2018.
Hey, Hey,
Yeah.
if I'd have had your cash app, I'd have sent you some money.
right.
Bless the man of God for this.
Right.
Well, thank you.
Because again, it was and it was what I was thinking, but nobody was was going to vocalize it or whatever. But again, like context is everything. It's different. Whatever was done to grow in the '90s, if you do it right now, would not work.
It's not the same climate.
It's not. And I suggest even last week when we were talking about conferences, I was like, I loved Ivy Hilliard's Church Strategies Conference, but you got to know going in, it's his strategies.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have his money. I don't have my church is not in the same place his is. Mm-hmm. Listen, one of the things that I did in Fifth Ward was we partnered with the food bank. Mm-hmm. Northeast Houston is a food desert. Yeah. Partnered with the food bank, gave away food.
We do too.
If you pastor in River Oaks,
you don't need to.
You don't need to do it. Everything is context.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you got, my generation younger sitting and listening to what they did in the 90s. And you're going to try to duplicate that. And then be surprised when it won't work. Mm-hmm. And so like you on my heart with that. But again, like for me, it just it pushed the point even more home or more clearer that just because somebody has know-how doesn't mean that it and we're real big at that. Oh, they did this, so you're gonna leave and take their advice. Well, when did they do it? How did they do it?
Exactly.
What tools did they use? Like Tom Rainer, and I love Tom Rainer's writing. Mm-hmm. Don't buy another Tom Rainer book. Why? And I'm not picking on Tom Rainer. I love Tom Rainer's writing, but it's like that whole premise. Mm-hmm. Even again, context is everything. Mm-hmm. Even as the stuff that we get of How to Grow a Church from like Nelson Searcy and all those names. Those are Caucasian churches. Mm-hmm. Like you can't. That play ain't going. And I think sometimes we just leave those things. We take it away and we leave and go like it got to be like Novocaine. Just give it time. Let it'll work.
I see us stealing a lot of that stuff, especially like all of us are ministers, clergy, and leadership, and probably African American spaces. So with that being said, I see those things happening a lot. When I start to see churches starting to revitalize their youth rooms, and they even start bringing that small group language in the youth room, and I'm exposed to a lot more, so I just start seeing, white churches were one of the first ones to like turn their youth area to like it's like a darn near arcade, and it's like hey guys, we're gonna have a bunch of we had 40 kids who came by and we all had pizza and had fun, and it's like, well, what edifying is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, and they want to brag about those numbers and all that stuff like that. About we had 60 kids show up for this and we had pizza and they just come and hang out and all that, and I'm just saved? You know what I'm saying, like what's the point of that? Like, don't they have they can hang out with the PTO at school, the after school organizations and scouts and all that stuff. They can do all that socializing and playing games somewhere else. But all those other places going to tell them about Jesus, about their salvation.
That should separate us.
Yeah, and that's why, like, when I start to see these affluent African American churches turning their youth spaces into just glorified game rooms and arcades, I'm just like, you guys are borrowing from other churches that's not ornate to not even our religious heritage, but our spiritual foundation. But to go back to the conference thing, I'm glad that we brought up the conference, because so many times they'll pigeonhole me and say, oh, you just hate women and you just always talking about this stuff. But I have to tell them, like, listen, I'm across the board. Like, I'd have been kicked out of young adult millennial groups.
Kicked out of nicer places than this.
Yeah, it's not that just I got this angst to grind against women in relationships. It's like, no, I see us going a different direction, and I see the Christian community going somewhere that's not only it's not biblical, but it's not even giving us the practical results that we want. Right. So when I see so I like this topic because I raised some of the same objections in ministry groups and preacher groups and pastors groups and association, and that has gotten me removed from a lot of them. And so because and it's not what I was saying, but it's who I'm saying it about. And because and a lot of times these conferences, we just go to them all willy-nilly, and they're not beneficial. And to my earlier quote in 2018, that was 5 years ago, the conference ain't got no more relevant in the last 5 years.
And here's the deal. I know you had one in mind in particular.
Yeah.
But it's only emblematic.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's a very copycat.
Right. It's the thing is that it can still be applied to other conferences and other parts of the country. We know the original intent, but the application is broad.
Absolutely.
So
man, I got removed from a group last year, and it was probably like 6,000 like pastors across the U.S. or not just pastors and ministers. I got removed from the group because I made a remark about a said conference, the same conference, and they had all these people who I like to say theologically presented red flags, and guys like Yolanda Pierce, what's the girl who teaches at the chaplain at Spelman, Nichelle Guidry, okay, I'm gonna say this name too, Freddie Haynes, and he has a lot of things that and he's more closer to our circle and everything like that. But at the same time, he has a lot of stuff that if you heard it, it would make you draw back and be like, wait a minute, like is he with us? And not just Freddie, and then what's a pastor from New York and all that stuff like that, and he and these guys were saying a lot of questionable things. So after I left the conference, I started looking up some of these people, and within minutes I found just outright blasphemous and like darn near heretical statements that these people were making on these platforms, and I'm just like, wait a minute, you all invited these people down here, and I posted in a group that these people, there's so many theological red flags in the main flyer of this conference, and for 24 hours I was a hater. I was they took the church from you, and you got you just hating on them because they didn't let you preach or they didn't invite you. They would I can't stand when black people do this, crab in a bucket, and y'all listen to this young man and he ain't did nothing, he ain't this and that. I said okay. I took it for 24 hours. The next day I started posting the clips. And when I started posting the clips, oh my goodness, I felt like that blind man when they was like, "Be quiet, Jesus is not here." Then it's like when Jesus said, "Bring him here." Oh, get up, come on! I was like, wow, you know what I'm saying? And boy, how quickly the crowd changed.
Right.
And then I was no longer a hater. I was no longer. And then the question shifted to like, you think did they know that these people had all these red flags and they was inviting all these folks and all that stuff like that? And I was just like, it took me literally 30 minutes to pull up I didn't have to dig deep. These guys are vocal with their unorthodox views. They are vocal with this stuff. And I'm just like, man, and the thing that was more disheartening about it was that the amount of calls that I got. And I got a bunch of calls during that week, and some people who actually sat on the board and all that stuff. And I was just like, listen, man, you were more familiar with these guys than I am. And you knew who they were invited. And not one of y'all who sat on this conference board said, hey, are you sure you want to invite this guy because of here? All y'all sat there and smiled and yes and right on, oh, great job, man. Yeah, you the man, doc, and all that other stuff. Y'all all did that. But I have to be the bad guy.
Right.
I have to be the bad guy to point out stuff that all of y'all knew because all y'all sat around and just smiled and docked and golfed and all that other stuff and I was like, man, that's the disheartening part.
Right. Right.
So it's
and then we talked about that a couple weeks ago. It's almost like as a pastor, I'm responsible for what you let in your ear.
Absolutely.
But if I'm running a conference, I don't bring me the bread. I don't care what you know what I'm saying? It's that popularity, that chase for, and again, like, the difference is I don't preach on Sunday for effect, right? The shout. My thing is to guide you towards some level of discipleship.
Yeah.
Right.
That the connecting the dots so you can be better and better and better.
Right.
And like some of these conferences, they know you're going to come, you're going to get what you're going to get, and you're going to dip. They don't care if you're any better when you leave than when you came.
Not at all.
And, we just trying to put
Just
together
let me rock the house.
a good ticket. And a good ticket means to pique your interest enough to spend your money and, and come and increase my platform or my name. And so that's what it ends up, being. But again, somebody got to say, especially the one we're talking about from a couple years ago, because it was like those videos made me start looking at some people, including, and here's what I don't like, about our culture. I love Freddie Haynes. As a person, I love Freddie Haynes. Great guy. But like some of his positions, I don't. So just because I don't share that position doesn't mean I don't like him as a person.
Right.
Correct.
We'll always make it personal.
Right.
Yeah.
And everybody is not automatically a hater because they disagree with you.
Yeah.
Right.
But we'll do that because usually when someone doesn't have a good argument and they haven't done their research, they can only resort to ad hominem attacks.
Attack the person.
They have to attack the person instead of attacking the position because it's easier.
Yeah.
Right.
It's easier to just dismiss because now I don't have to actually think.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I was saying last week, think it's not illegal yet.
Right.
But oh, go ahead.
Man, and that's something that I had to really feel this, like, man, because people, I guess they come across something that I said online and they think like, oh man, he always looking for trouble and always contentious person. I'm really not. Like, I love people. I love black people. I love women. I love the church. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I get along with most preachers and pastors.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But it's like it's not personal. I mean,
Right.
Like for me, if you're gonna be my friend, that's a hard task, because if you're gonna be my friend, then you're gonna have to tell me about myself even when I don't want to hear it. Like, to be my friend, like guys who we're friends, we done had a falling out or two. We got to go through some falling out to where it's like, listen, you're not going to like what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. And then I'll get mad and hang up the phone. And you know what I'm saying? 6 weeks later, we'll talk. Then it's like, well, Doc, I'm glad you told me about myself. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, for me, friendship is not, because I see a lot of folk and even ladies who have friends where they just have to say yes and encourage. And I just want you to support me. I'm not that friend.
Right.
I'm not going to support you making a fool of yourself. And something that's gonna make, because that's not the type of friend I want. If you gonna be my friend, you gotta check me when I'm wrong.
Right.
And I can hate you for I want to be married one day, but who I put as my best man are gonna be the best man for me. If they find me somewhere out there with somebody messing up my marriage, and I need them to have enough boldness to say, Christopher, go home to your wife. Stop messing up your household. You about to ruin your family. I need friends that'll check me on that.
Yeah.
Not guys that be like, yeah, Doc, she was looking good and all, and just support me on that stuff, like, while I'm just ruining my marriage and my household.
And the thing is, saying something is the more loving thing
Thank you.
to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So like people think, oh well, it's just hating. No, it's actually the opposite. It's because I love you.
Right.
Yeah.
It's because I love you as a brother in Christ. It's because I love you as a sister in Christ that I'm telling you you're going away.
Right.
It leads to destruction.
Right.
And it's not personal.
You know,
it's
right?
not
It's not
personal.
No.
Yeah.
And I would even go as far as
New
to say,
Jack City. Oh, it's
you're
just
not my
business.
friend
Never
until
personal.
we fall out.
I agree.
Right. And that's dealing with conflict. Like, we talked about earlier. It's like, hey, if we have a tiff, is that it?
Right.
And,
Right.
And that goes for dating, and that goes for
friendships.
for friendships. Does that make sense? It's like, man, if we fall out at the smallest little thing, then it's like, okay, there's no resilience. There's no trying to work through anything.
Right.
And that's the only time that you really know.
Absolutely.
That you really know what you're dealing with when you face adversity together. Anybody can face prosperity together.
Yeah, when we up.
What was the old saying? Old people, teeth and tongue fall out. but they come back together again. Is that like, okay, we can, if one disagreement is going to be the end of our friendship or relationship, we didn't have a friendship or relationship again.
Absolutely.
Right.
But, you know, and especially if we're disagreeing about, because I and that's just me, I don't feel like all criticism is destructive.
Right.
There is a such thing as constructive criticism.
Right.
Norman Vincent Peale has a quote that I love, and maybe y'all have heard it. You know, people would rather be ruined by praise than to be helped by criticism. And I'm just like, yeah, that we live in a culture that I've saw how praise has ruined people to where it's like, man, like sometimes you need to fall on your face. Like we're all ministers. You need to preach a bad sermon. You need to preach that one where you fall on your face and ain't nobody ain't nobody and everybody looking at you. You need to feel that embarrassment of, Doc, I just bombed and they lost me and I still got another 20 more minutes to go. And that's the worst feeling in the world. So we're like, man, like I am destroying this text and no oil is in me and then you know what I'm saying? And that motivation is like, you know what? I'm finna get it. I'm gonna study some more. One of my worst sermons was in Richmond, Texas. I preached that. It was awful. I threw that whole manuscript out the window. I was like, I ain't been back since. I'm scared to show my face in Richmond but I needed that. But then because that made me say, you know what? I don't want to experience that no more. And a lot of times, like. And even my relationship with these conferences and even amongst these preachers and pastors, man, look, man, I saw them inviting speakers who were pushing things toward a different direction. And these are not the orthodox or traditional Christianity to which we were raised from. And like if I had to put something amongst scripture, these are people who were sowing weeds while we were planting wheat. And we are sowing wheat, and they came along and sowing weeds. And these are people that are sowing different philosophies and different ideologies. Some that will literally have you end up in hell. Like some that are heaven or hell. And when I saw them, and I was exposed to these people because of the platform, and I'm just like, man, I didn't know about them until you all introduced me to them by coming to this conference. And you can call me a hater and all that stuff like that, but the worst damage is that you've just advanced their platform, where these people who are primarily East Coast and up north and all that kind of, I talk a lot of noise about them up north folk. Like you got to come to the Bible Belt to get some real preaching and theology. Right. But them up north folk who got all that kind of crazy theology and on this other stuff, you done exposed and expanded their base by bringing them down here. Right. And instead of printing a retraction, instead of kind of fixing it or correcting it, you rather get on me than fix the problem. For exposing it. Right.
And like some of them were so, like the video I saw, some of it was so foundational. Like, we believe scripture is inerrant. It is the ashetest. Like anything that's not on scripture,
is off.
It ceased to be. Right. So when you got somebody who'll stand and say, hey, look, you know, it depends on, you know, how you feel about what's written. And you don't have to believe the
your
word
feelings
of God.
Your feelings on the matter, or you know, if you get up
that's
there,
foundational. There's no getting around. That's not and I know this, you know, I know our culture, and we're not talking about the difference between whether or not you believe in, you know, women in ministry or not. That's like when you're talking about the Bible and whether or not it's
well, there's certain things that like you said, determine the difference between eternal destination.
Absolutely.
Or that can cause a great amount of confusion. You got a guy that's a major pastor running around talking about the Holy Spirit is a woman.
Yeah. And see, we hold on, and which brings us back to that relationship stuff. We got to check stuff like that too early, because that stuff, I don't know where you all stand on women in ministry and all that stuff like that. At this point, I don't really trip on that stuff, because for me, I do not believe in women as pastors, but I for me, that was never that's hardly a hill that's either heaven or hell.
It's not It's not a heaven or hell thing. You know, that we'll have to leave that for another episode.
Yeah.
But that's why I brought it up.
But it's not a primary
those kind
thing
of things
that determines. Right.
Yeah.
You know,
I never wanted to be like, oh no. I never came down too hard on that. But what I have came down hard on is that a lot of some of the, I guess you could say the theology, and people, one lady even told me the other week, it was like, oh, you need to familiarize yourself with some great womanist theologians. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that because there are not many womanist theologians that I would ever want to add into my biblical canon, into my biblical interpretation. Because a lot of the stuff that they're taking with scripture, it's like, what? Like this whole...
You got different philosophy.
Right.
And
Your starting point is different than a literal, grammatical, historical interpretation. So we're already starting off
totally, and that's I'm just like, man,
with a problem.
And so it's and that's one of the things that I'm very careful on. Like the issue is no longer women preachers, and that's kind of how they loop it. Oh, you guys are just afraid of women preachers. Y'all just afraid of this. I'm
not afraid of it.
No, but
that infers phobia.
I see where you go.
Is the irrational fear of.
Yeah.
There's a difference. You can put any blank phobic. You can't say that I have this irrational fear of it because I disagree with it.
Right.
That's not an irrational fear. That's me understanding and holding to the truth that's found in the Bible. That doesn't make me blank phobic. And you can put anything you want in the blank, and I'm ready to have the conversation. Right. But that phobic, that gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah, it's
right.
2020.
Yeah, that is.
If you disagree, then
you're a phobic.
Because people, again, when we don't adhere to objective reality, then we're subject to relativism. So then we forget that words mean something.
Absolutely.
You can't just throw phobia behind anything.
Yeah.
And that just, paints over it. It's like, no. I don't have the irrational fear of said thing.
But even our opinions and thought processes behind women in ministry and so many other things will come from our interpretation of the Bible. When you say the Bible don't matter, it's like now what we're talking about.
Well, if we can't agree that 2 + 2 = 4, we can't have a conversation.
Right.
And so if you are coming to the table and you say, okay, that Shawn, I agree with you that the Bible is true, inerrant, infallible, God breathed. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. We're going to arrive at the same conclusions.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you reject the premise, then we have a wider issue.
Right.
And that's my issue, is when people want to reject the premise of what their philosophy is built on. You want to use my rules to support your worldview.
Right.
And then try to say to me, hey, your worldview that supports and buttresses everything about my worldview, I'm going to be a cafeteria Christian, and I'm going to take that which I want and leave that which I don't.
Right.
And I'll have a happy meal.
Right. Cafeteria Christian.
Right. You can pick and choose.
Yeah, you can pick and choose. Yeah, there's no such thing as a parochial Piccadilly.
Right.
It's not, it doesn't work that way.
You are correct.
That they'll say it's semantics. Is the Bible the Word of God, or does it contain the Word of God? If it's the Word of God, you got to take the whole thing.
Yeah.
If it just contains, then you're going to pick and choose what you want, what you don't want.
Which again, whenever someone tries to use one part of the Bible, or they want to leave out Paul, they want to make an argument, but it's like, but I'm not going to deal with Paul. Well, is that the Word of God?
Right.
Do you agree? So before we even sit at the table, I need to know that about the other person.
If we got to throw out Paul, we got to throw out the New Testament.
Right.
Because you cannot find a more impactful writer of the New Testament than Paul. And if you take him out, you got to basically just get rid of the whole New Testament.
Well, you got to get rid of the whole Bible, because just because Paul penned it, it still came from the mind of God. It's still God breathed. There's no, it doesn't matter if it's a red or a black letter.
Yeah.
It's all God's word.
It's a letter.
All scripture is inspired.
Yeah.
Right.
So you don't get the opportunity to do the cafeteria Christian situation.
No.
You don't get to pick and choose. It's an all or nothing proposition.
Right.
So you take all of it or you take none of it.
I want mine with no cheese.
Right.
You
can't. Hey, you can't have it your way.
There's some questions that I normally ask every preacher that I and I've heard you several times. Matter of fact, you did something here recently that I looked online at Mount Sinai. I was like, yeah, that's a solid outline. Some of that's gonna come up missing. So any preacher that I respect, it's the same old. Some years ago, God kind of fused me and Shawn together. He accepted his call under someone who's like a mentor to me. And, Shawn was like, hey, a word of advice for any young preacher, what would it be? And I actually thought, I'm like, man, just, what would I want to hear? And I think it was a couple things, like, one, more is caught than taught.
Yeah.
So, my thing to every preacher is like, who did you grow up listening to?
Yeah.
Because whoever you listen to, that's what you're going to end up sounding like. And like, we live in a generation where a lot of people are listening to certain types of, if you spend your time listening to Jamal Bryant and Mike Todd and
Stephen Furtick.
Yeah, right. That's what you
Excuse me, Reverend.
You need something. Clear your throat. Clear your throat.
Like that's what you're going to end up sounding like. And
I thought I was bad. I'm here with y'all today. Y'all.
And I'm not saying anything. And I'm not saying anything bad necessarily about that type of preaching.
Y'all get on my nerve. Y'all had me. I for the last 3 years, I've been thinking I was by myself, and y'all over here got a whole podcast. And y'all, where was this at? Shoot, I'm over here.
I'm not saying anything bad about that type of preaching.
I'll say it for you.
It's just not what I want to hear. But a lot of guys listen to that and think you're gonna stand up on Sunday morning and sound like Gordon Taylor, and you're not. It's not gonna happen like so. It's like
pointless preaching.
Right. Like, so what do you spend your time listening to? So, like, to you, like, who did you grow up listening to?
Honestly, man, I grew up for me, and I still have to say this, and it might be shocking. I grew up listening to Ralph West.
Hey,
and Ralph West,
green suit, olive green suit, dancing out of his clothes
in the 90s.
That
was my
90s, 2000s.
Come
on, man.
Every sermon he ever preached.
Yeah, they used to get on me in seminary because they used to all make fun of me. They'll try to introduce me to all these. Oh man, listen to Noel Jones, listen to this guy, listen to this, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, it's cool. And that's you don't think nobody a better preacher than Ralph West, and I was like, well, it is what it is,
right.
because that's what I grew up on. That was my home church. I just thought I appreciated his preaching. And it took me going off to seminary to realize, man, this guy's a national preacher.
Yeah. No, he's a national voice.
Yeah.
I greatly appreciate it.
I thought it was just Houston. And I always tell people, man, listen, like for me and that was my home church. I'm no longer there, whatever. But I still can't take this part away. For me, man, like between 1990 and about 2010, that was not a better preacher in my eyes. And I'm telling you, man, for me, this guy was killing everything in sight. Yeah. And I'm talking on Sunday mornings, on when he go out to preach a midweek service, and I'm talking and then when I start talking, when I went off to school and left Houston, and I started meeting people from Arkansas, people from Michigan, people from Detroit, and they was like, who's your pastor? Ralph West? They was like, you know Ralph West? And they'll start telling me these stories about oh man, he came and preached a revival in Mississippi. Doc, we was all laid out, and he did a 4-night revival in Tennessee, and we was all, Doc killed everything. And so I just be like, man, listen, Doc, man, like, you know, it's nothing personal. It's nothing personal. But I still say, man, that guy was, man, he defined what preaching was for me.
Yeah, for a long
and I can't
time.
take that away from him.
No,
I can't take that away.
For a long time, you could, for me, he was. And I've been, it's sad, because I got gray in my beard. I've been listening to preaching, period, in Houston Kid, preaching so long, you can hear who Pastor West listened to in his preaching.
Yeah.
So like in his preaching, you can hear
A.
Lewis.
Yeah.
You in his preaching, you can hear Jasper. Like you could just hear the voices, some of his cadence and stuff. You could just hear who he listened to. So, and that's why I say, like, preaching is, you know, for us, it's like, you know, you are what you eat.
Yeah.
You know, you eat it all the time. And I was I was a Westside. He preached a greatest sermon I ever heard for a long time till somebody trumped it. He preached a New Year's Day for Rudy White. Rudy doesn't even have that bowl no more on New Year's Day. He preached a New Year's Day, and he opened with the illustration of the Elephant Man, and it was the man in the tombs.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, I think yeah.
Good
one.
Dog,
I'm talking about just.
Dog, he brought his whole locomotive and just I'm gonna hit y'all with this big old train, and I'm gonna smash it on y'all. And like I tell people, I was like, man, Ralph West was preaching like his family was held hostage with a knife, and the house was burning, and he had to preach in order for the robbers, to let his family go as ransom. Like as a ransom, you gotta preach a knockdown sermon, or we go murder your entire family. And he went out there and preached like he was trying to give his last. I say, man, that and that's yeah.
But believe it or not, that setting, that day, Dr. West preached. I mean, I was like, yeah, this is the greatest. James Dixon got up behind him, and I'm like, ooh, this is the greatest. Tennessee, Memphis. Frank Ray got up behind him, and I was like, man, this is the greatest. Then R.A. Williams got up behind him and closed, and I'm like, all of this preaching was going on in one building, and you look like this was this had to be early 2000s or late 90s. This was like the hub of preaching, and I was like, and you know, and I believe it was Delvin's cousin that told him, like, it's always good preaching laying around. I mean, you know, if you got open eyes, you could, you know. And so I growing up, A. Lewis Patterson, every first Sunday night I was gonna go, you know, their communion. A. Lewis gonna preach on accident.
I like it.
It was, you know, so like growing up in Houston, man, those were the, you know, the names, and then like national names, you know, preachers that, you know, just. But I feel like it's important for us to, because you know those voices that you keep hearing, they set the groundwork for what God is doing in your own voice. You know?
Oh, absolutely.
So, was there any other voices you listened to?
Influences?
Growing up, no. Growing up, it was all him. But I mean, now I still listen. I listen to other people that I really enjoy. I listen to Craig Barnes. Craig Barnes. I got exposed to him. He did a winter pastor school. Like it came to Baylor. Then I was exposed to him, and I just love his style of preaching. How he's, you know, takes the idea and then he says, "Give me that one line. Give me that one line from heaven. Then I'll take the rest." I enjoy some. I love listening to some Craig Barnes. I don't really listen to like the popular preachers and things like that. Oh, I'll tell you another one, and this is probably one of them that's kind of not so much. I used to not so much now lately. Not that his preaching has fell off anything, but Charles Stanley. I used to enjoy me some Charles Stanley because for him. For me, he preached just methodical, structured sermons, and it was just like at the at the minimum of what you should be able to do on Sunday morning is to give just a solid biblical 4-point or however 3-point message. And so that's what I thought of when I would listen to Charles Stanley. And it's like, man, you know, he seemed like he was very militant, like almost like a military person giving you a message. I'm going to give you these 3 things on how God is going to, you know, first of all, and so I really enjoy some Charles Stanley. And I also got to talk about my preaching professor, Dr. Joel Gregory. Dr. Joel Gregory, what he exposed me to, I took so many of his classes. I preached my first sermon in his class, my very first sermon under Dr. Joel Gregory, and for what he did as far as like opening up the imagination of a text and all that stuff like that, I still sit back and think like, man, some of where I was and where I was sitting when I heard him preach certain messages. Right. And I mean, I'm sure we all had it with the people that we look up to, and we know where we was and where we were sitting and what sermon that they preached. And I still relish, I'm nostalgic when I look back at those type of, you know, sermons and those type of preaching back in the day. And I just hope that the up and coming, the next generation has those moments.
And see, that's why I ask preachers that all the time, because you're gonna always hear a name or two that you know, this generation wouldn't know. Joel Gregory's, for me, the highlight sermon just in my head, his 50th year anniversary of preaching.
Oh, that was
he
good.
Preached. Oh my, that good. That was great. I was like, okay, rip this page of the Bible out of my, because it's gone.
You can't preach that. You can't preach that ever. Like, yeah,
there's nothing you can do with this. One of the voices that I got, much like Charles Stanley was to you, Adrian Rogers.
Yeah.
Man, I fell in love with Adrian Rogers, and I was like,
friend.
Right.
Friend.
Right.
Listen, I'm here to tell you this, friend.
Right.
If you don't believe God right now, you're going to bust hell wide open. I would not tell you this if I didn't love you. So. Right.
Adrian was, and then
Adrian
I think
Rogers,
hearing Adrian Rogers' mentor, Stephen Olford. Who I you know got some time to go to the Olfordist to listen to, you know, Stephen Olford, and you know, just, and so again, it's like good preaching, the art form of good preaching, I think is handed down from generation to generation, but you know, one generation has to be willing to receive it and then give it to the next generation. So you know, we're in a very unusual season.
But you know, good preaching's got to be there for you to find it. It's got to already be good preaching. You see right there? Now he got it.
I got you.
It's already got to be good in order for you to find it.
Yeah. He that finds. I love it.
So we we got to get you back, but I want you to close. You know, we'll close with this kind of stuff. Where do you see the church in this post-pandemic type? And then, like, what do you feel like the church should be busy doing to be better?
I'll start with the second question first. I think what the church should be doing to get better is the church needs to intentionally go younger. Like, intentionally. Pastor Rudy Rasmus, down here in St. John, is probably like 8, maybe even 9 years ago. We were doing a wedding together, and he said this. He said, man, and I was surprised that he said it. He was like, man, these old folk need to move out the way for these young folk. And he was talking to the pastors. He was talking about them. He said, man, they need to move out the way. He used himself as an example. He said, man, I preach at my church maybe once a month. He said, we old folk need to move out the way for these young folk. And he was telling me something that he believed. Like, I used to look at it as a demotion to kind of, he send him back there to go talk to the youth, send him to speak to the youth. But I don't take it as that. You know, I look at that as like, that's the future church. And those people who I was youth pastoring, They're getting married now. I'm doing weddings. I've officiated their weddings. They're 23 years old. They're not youth anymore. Right. These are grown up men and women. And I'm fortunate that I still have a voice that connects to them. And I say, man, our churches need to intentionally go younger. I'm not saying that, change the sanctuary and start dressing down. I'm not saying stuff like that, bring in games and start rapping from the pulpit. I'm not saying stuff like I hate stuff like that, but I think there does need to be a concerted effort to who are we pouring into? Right. Who are we invested in? I need to find some young man, some young woman that I want to intentionally man, look, I want you to shadow me. I want you to mentor me and all this stuff like that. Like, I'm grateful for the church I'm at Mount Sinai. I was one of those persons who were always, I'm a millennial and I always wanted to change and get rid of this old stuff. And the Lord stuck me at an older church. Mount Sinai's about to be 124 years old this year, an older seasoned church. And I think that was the right move for me because I needed to sit down and be around some older saints and learn a lot, from my granddad in the ministry, S.J. Gilbert Sr. I mean, he would take his time and mentor me and talk to me and just iron out areas that I was weak in, that I didn't even know I was weak in. And so me being a young person wanting to blow a torch to all that old stuff and I had to sit up under it and learn how it was appreciated. The same way that I'm learning from them, they are also learning from me. I'm able to come at text differently and to teach things differently. And I mean, I preach to old or young. I remember when the Seasoned Saints had me as their preacher for their Seasoned Saints Day. And I was fortunate, We went out to, what's that place the old people like to go to, that restaurant where you drive up? It's some restaurant with a lot of old people like going to. It's somewhere off the river, like going toward Galveston or something like that. But it's like a fancier Luby's. And they had me as their speaker and I preached for them.
Oh, that's by the Ship Channel.
Yeah, probably
the Ship Channel.
Yeah,
Monument Inn?
No, Ship Channel. It's closed.
Brady's Landing. Yeah, and they brought me to Brady's Landing.
I don't know why they didn't jump up first because they will put Brady's Landing in a minute.
They love Brady's Landing, and they brought me as their preacher for Brady's Landing, and when I tell you the way I preach to them is the way I would preach to anybody else.
Wow.
And they learn from it. They're enriched by it, and like saying, I think they've enjoyed having me around, and I've enjoyed having them around. Maybe that's what Titus was talking about in Timothy, about the older and the younger. There needs to be that tension and that connection to where, we're learning from them, but also they're learning things from us. And I think church needs to be more intentional about fostering those. Sometimes let me say this. These millennials are hard because they're not your givers. And they're fickle.
Right.
They're fickle. They're inconsistent. They're not loyal. They're not. I get on us. Our people, man. We so fickle and sometimey, and we don't give. We don't show up. You can't. You can't be accountable, and we're late, and all this stuff like that. It's a lot of stuff that's wrong with us.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm saying, if y'all could find a way to get that group and stick them with them and stay up under them even after they not show up and they not coming, like, stick with them, man. I was bucking the system for some years at Mount Sinai, but and it still worked out, and I'm glad it still worked out that way. I think the church needs to go, intentionally younger, and then especially post pandemic, the church had to morph into learning this technology. How do we have worship in when we can't leave our homes? I saw more older people on social media than ever before, and to where they were resistant. I remember when I tried to institute a group me, and they was like, they didn't want to do the group me. because there was a lot of pushback about telling everybody to do group me as a way to receive announcements. But then now you look at it as when the pandemic hit, they all had to learn how to get to Facebook, learn how to get on Teams, learn how to work Zoom, learn how to do Facebook Live and YouTube and all that stuff like that. And they're more able to morph into doing those things. I think they have some more morphing that they're capable of doing. Yeah. If you push them, if we have godly leaders who are and that's why I'm so frustrated with these new age preachers who are trying to take people toward a different direction and it's unorthodox view, when I think there's a room for you can be young and you can be orthodox. You can be young and believe the Bible. You can be young and still fresh and new ideas and preach imaginative sermons, but that are still true to believing that Jesus is Lord,
right,
and that he's the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. I believe that stuff still is relevant to our time, and it's still relevant to our culture and community, and young people want to hear it. Our millennials want to hear it. We want to hear that, man, that even at my worst, God's grace still abounds. Where sin abounds, grace did what more abound. And man, that stuff means something to our people. Man, if you can find out a way to do it, man.
Yeah. And that's why I asked, because in this generation, I think every pastor, preacher we've had on, I've asked, because we got to find a way to be creative, but still be correct.
Yeah.
Right.
And not just correct, but complete. Like, you know what I'm saying? The whole truth and, nothing but the truth, but in a creative, because now.
Creative presentation.
Right. Now we're at the end of somebody's fingertips.
Yeah.
Right.
Rev ain't saying what I wanted to say today.
Next.
This sermon just ended.
Let me go to Furtick. What is Mike Todd saying?
Right?
Who's he spitting on now?
Absolutely. We all go to
I want to get on the water slide.
Yeah.
Okay, that one was
just
that one was
messy all day.
Shots fired.
Right. Hey, man, thank you so much for joining us this week, man. This has been a blast, man.
Yeah, man. Enjoyed it, man.
Yeah,
thank
y'all for having me.
Yeah, we gotta do this. We gotta do this again soon, man. You just don't know. Well, I tell you after we get up, you just don't know, boy. I was like, boy, Chris, my dude.
Right, exactly.
My dude.
Right.
Ooh, thank God. Everybody needed Chris. Thank God for Chris.
Right.
Because I wasn't going to say it, but I was sure thinking it. Like, ooh. And then when you said it, I was, amen.
Right. Amen again.
Listen, you got anything coming up, any kind of events you want to plug?
Man, I'm trying to graduate. If I'm trying to graduate, Lord,
But you see his face.
Jesus be a dissertation, right? I promise you, Lord, if you get me out of this, I'll serve you. I'll preach what you want me to preach.
Say the balance of my day.
Yeah, Lord, I promise you, I'm gonna go hard for the kingdom. Just please let me get this dissertation done, make my chairs. You did it for Moses.
Right.
You can do it again.
Right.
You
did it for Abraham.
Yeah,
Isaac, and Jacob. All the way down the road.
Jesus be a dissertation. I swear, I want it.
Man,
you're able, guys.
Right? Man, we gonna pray that everything works out.
Yes, sir.
Man, you're one of the voices, man, that I feel like young people, especially in this city, need.
Thank you.
So, man, I pray everything goes well with you, and you get that, and when you don't be like the rest of these dudes, get your little doctorate and then don't come back.
Right.
Come back holler at your boy. I know I ain't no doctor, but you can come holler at your boy.
Always.
Man, Shawn, you got anything coming up you want to plug?
Man, nothing for airtime that I can.
That'll make airtime.
Yeah.
Man, I don't. We got friends and family this Sunday, but I won't make airtime. Reggie.
Yes.
Yeah, Reggie.
I might try to sneak in and catch that back row.
Man, Reggie will be with us Sunday, man. So I'm excited about that. And then some other things are going on. Listen, I'll have some more information about some things that Tasha Jackson is doing Northeast next week. So keep your eyes and ears in tune for that. Again, thank you for joining us. Like, share, subscribe. Man, I've enjoyed Chris thoroughly today. I'm gonna speak it into existence. We enjoyed Dr. Gordon today.
Right.
And God would bless and keep Reverend Doctor. And
Right?
Yes, Lord.
I was saying he's gonna go across
Yes, Lord.
traditions. He'll go across the
Lord.
traditions.
Yes, Lord.
I receive it, man of God.
Right?
Man, thank y'all for joining us. Like, share, subscribe. Look out for each other. Pray for each other. All we have is each other. Until we see you guys again next week, grace and peace.